Obviously, this is the network fundamentals one. Part 3, which will be coming up in February, which John said is the intelligent devices. That'll be done by my coworker, Steve Fry. So for those of you who want to learn more about that or continue on with this course, feel free to. We'll all let you know and we'll send you out invites for the next one. But to move it on. All right. So obviously in today's connected age, things are more connected than ever. And a big part of this series is we're trying to help modernize while at the same time optimize what you may already have so you can help bring value to your customers and at the same time to make sure that your throughput is better than ever. You can get more data from it, you can collect more information, you can obviously have a smoother running machine, less troubleshooting, less issues, less need for overly complicated things. So those of you that don't know what a smart connected system is, to break it down, obviously smart devices are self-aware, not in the Terminator sense, but a smart device knows what's going on with it, and if configured correctly, can be sending the user information, letting them know, hey, here's what's going on, here's how much I pushed through, so on and so forth. Here's what errors may exist within the system, or if everything's smooth, that too. Obviously, with it, it has to be configured. It can't just be left alone. But the brilliant thing about it is once we have it configured, you're going to be getting more data that you can then use to make a much better optimized system. Consider it in the sense of, how do I put it? Today's modern vehicles, if you look at a lot of the European vehicles, basically one of the key things they have are an easy to navigate center console for most. But in that center console, for those of us who are mechanically inclined, you can get constant issues of what's happening, what might be happening, what code might come up in the future. Now, beforehand, you'd just be driving your car along. Let's go back to when cars were much more analog. You'd be driving along, an issue would happen. You're taking care of it then and now. But if you have something that's going to let you know, oh, hey, this might potentially be coming up, something doesn't seem right here, but it hasn't failed yet, that gives you the time to then start planning and building upon it. So going off of what I said, obviously, what all this does in the greater sense, it makes life a lot easier. So it's much simpler, it's more cost effective, and reduces risk. The first sentence says it better than I could. In that sense, you're making what might seem complicated into an easier, simpler, bite-sized system. All that information, once collected and executed, can go on, make life a lot easier for your factory and for those of you who are pushing it towards customers. So we'll get into the next step. Ethernet IP is an industrial standard. This was created with ODVA, and it mainly pertains to the Ethernet application. Forgive me. The Ethernet application part in the larger scheme of things. How do I break this down? To give you clues, so if those of you have heard of please don't throw away sausage pizza, essentially you have the TCP/IP diagram, and what that shows you are the various types of layers that give information, what information comes out of them, so on and so forth. Now, obviously, in the industrial side, we're getting rid of some of that information, and it's staying fairly, what's the word I'm looking for here? Fairly simpler. So there's not going to be as much people, say, using a computer and going on the internet. So this is more of collecting information from the machines, seeing what it gives us, so on and so forth. Now, with Ethernet IP, what it ends up doing is essentially it takes the CIP protocol, and for those of you who don't know, CIP protocol, Common Industrial Protocol, but it takes it and brings it to obviously the Ethernet layer. Second. So just make sure I'm not getting ahead of myself. With this showing obviously various different branches of of the CIP protocol. So those of you who are familiar with it, obviously we're breaking it down now into how it can be performed on the networking side. So CIP motion, CIP safety, CIP security, CIP energy. Rockwell, ODVA, and a few others have all come together, making it one of the industry standards in order to essentially build upon what you can get with the information. So outside of CIP, obviously, we're going to NIST, and that's the National Institute of Standards and Technology. That brings us to the cybersecurity framework. Now, one of the biggest issues is a lot of manufacturers are not exactly safe in a sense. A lot of them may believe under certain pretenses that, oh, we've got nothing to worry about. Nobody can get into it, or we're not a big guy. But obviously in today's world, it's more important than ever to keep everything as secure as possible. We'll be going into it a little bit later with CPWE, but essentially segmentation, patching, and various other small steps go a long way to protect your network. So IEC 62443 is another standard, and this one was brought by the Industrial Automation and Control System. This is more of, once again, breaking down what to do in case, let me just move that over here. Breaking down how you should be building upon that security system, that security ideology, the guidance within your system. So it addresses a lot of different points that many people might not consider or might forget. But in a grand sense, you're considering let me go back. In a grand sense, you have to consider, okay, what are the issues and what can potentially become an issue? Documenting and better preparing for if something were to happen, what can we do? But at the same time, too, what can we fix? One of the key things when it comes to a lot of it is what is outdated, what is not patched versus patched, what is not documented versus documented, and so on and so forth. Gathering that data goes a long way in order to help secure it, obviously, in the future. So obviously, Rexel, we can help. Us, with our partnership with Cisco, those of you who don't know Cisco, obviously they are the world leader in networking. Cisco itself is essentially the standard, or I should say, they've created the standard when it comes to networking and securing your network, whether it be enterprise related or OT networks. So I brought this up earlier, but CPWE, Converged Plantwide Ethernet. One of the biggest issues that we've noticed and that we've seen with a lot of manufacturers are the enterprise system and the industrial system. Neither of them are segmented. There's nothing really keeping them separated. Now, that in a sense is not a hard problem to solve. It's more or less keeping it, as I said, segmented. And I'm trying not to go into too much detail, forgive me here. What you're doing is you're taking the network and you're putting it that what's on the OT side of things can't reach the internet, can't reach out, so on and so forth, unless there's a device that, say, you have remote capabilities with or want to have remote capabilities with, you can. But it's not touching the enterprise network. Reason for that is typically the enterprise network of almost any business is usually the one that's hit. So typically when somebody gets hacked, they'll usually get hacked in the enterprise network. To give you an example, the pipeline that was hacked a few months back, what ended up getting hacked was not the pipeline itself. Thankfully, they had that part segmented, but it was actually their billing system on their enterprise side. Now, without going into too much information with it, you can see that had they not had it as segmented as possible, the issue is your hackers would then have free reign to go and do a lot of damage to their pipeline, a lot of damage to their refineries. You can think worst case scenario. At the end of the day, we are technically all targets in a sense to any actor of malicious intent. We have to be sure to keep ourselves secure. We have to be sure to keep ourselves safe. Now, there are a lot of different ways about or going about keeping ourselves safe. But here we have Rexel, Rockwell, Cisco bringing it easier and making it into a simplified view that everybody can take a bite out of and understand very well. Next one. Obviously, we have a lot of guides to various different designs that you want for a network, white paper, so on and so forth for it. I'm not going to go through all of it, but they're here. And obviously, if anybody wants a copy of it, feel free to ask me. This is just an example. There's a lot more than this. So they've already been going to town with this because there are going to be so many different networks, so many different things. Say, when considering a plant, somebody may have older legacy equipment, but it's still on a modern network. Okay, they can't upgrade their stuff, but how do we go about keeping that secured versus an ultra modern plant which has the latest and greatest stuff? Obviously, it's two different things, but you have to go about it two different ways. You can't do what's good for one system for the other. and it's getting to know each and every system and getting to make each and every system as optimized or modernized as best it possibly can. So, defense in strategy, obviously, how are we going about defending stuff? What are we doing? And goes back to what I was saying earlier. We're working obviously with our customers, and at the same time, our customers are working with us, distributor, and everybody's working with the manufacturer, so on and so forth, to figure out the best course of action for everyone. And a lot of security ends up happening at the network layer. With it, we are essentially trying to secure and fix one of the most, that's what I'm looking for here, valuable positions in any manufacturer, any plant, any business, securing that network, what we can do for it, how we can offer it, and how we can keep from there constantly update upon it. So we have a few different sources that we can use within what we have. Obviously, there's Factory Talk Security, CIP Security, Source and Execution Protection. One that isn't on here, we work closely with two others. One a lot more, which is Clarity, and the other one is CrowdStrike. Those are both AV/IDSs made, at least on the side of Clarity, made more so for the factory side of things, for the OT side of things. But most of this, if not all of it, it ties in with your Active Directory, so you're not going to be creating a brand new user, brand new group. It's going to be simple in that sense. Those of you who don't know, that basically Active Directory is when you go into work and you type in your username and password, that's Active Directory essentially. Somebody created your user profile, so on and so forth. You can go log on to all the computers. You have certain rights and regulations. That makes it a lot easier than having to go to every single machine or anything on the OT side of the network and having to recreate a person over and over again. Just move this out of the way. CIP Security, another one that I'm fond of. There are a lot of various ways that we can protect with that, whether it be hardware related or software related. One neat device that we actually have is specifically for legacy networks, but it's only a band-aid just to give them a bit more time so they can help protect and help build upon what they have, giving them a good amount of time to fix that. This is just a bigger overview, but one of the big things that comes with a lot of security is segmentation, authentication, integrity, and confidentiality. So, like I said before, obviously one of the big things is authenticating. You don't want to have to go through every single machine and create a new user over and over again, or create this user with this rights. We're making it easier that it can connect with your AD. And with that, one person, all you have to do is set whatever that new person is, what rights they have, what they can use, so on and so forth. Okay. Obviously, now we are going on to, what's what I'm looking for here, our services side of things. And one of the things that we offer and accredited from Rockwell is various services in whether it be network assessments or a security posture survey. That's Mark Miosi, who's here with me today. Mark Miosi will explain it.
Good
Mark,
morning.
are you?
Yep. Thanks,
All
Josh.
right.
Next slide,
Welcome.
please. Thanks. As Josh mentioned, my name is Mark Miosi. I'm part of the Rexel Automation Delivered Services team focused on industrial automation control systems and operational technologies network. We provide assessments, design, documentation through our authorized service provider program with Rockwell Automation, Cisco, Panduit, Microsoft, and partners that we have within the industry to provide documentation based on industry standards. Next slide, please. Our focus is on the OT, right? The industrial zone down. Where that DMZ is or that IDMZ would be, we are talking about policies, procedures, installed assets, physical, logical, virtual, and security specific to your operational technologies. And then in turn, how that would then correspond with your enterprise or IT zones. There are topics around that, but our focus is specific to the operational technologies network. Next slide, please. There you go. We offer a phased approach, which again, as Josh mentioned earlier, NIST, Department of Homeland Security, IEEE, CIP, CPWE, policies and procedures are what we follow. And the best way to have a successful project, whether that's focused on security, modernization, analytics, digital transformation, or whatever buzzword you're looking to insert there, understanding what the network looks like, what is installed, how it is communicating, is delivered to you in a documentation, all based on standards specific to your operations, your facility, your policies and procedures. So we start with assessments before we would move into a design, implementation, validation, monitoring, etc. All starts with a true understanding. Next slide, please. Our standard network assessment is focused on the OT devices. We provide listing of the assets that are installed, whether it's a switch, a server, a protocol converter, drives, PLCs, industrial PCs, whatever is connected to Ethernet. We will identify those assets based on a hierarchy that you've created with us to show you where they're at, what location they are in, what the description of the device actually is. There's then ratings based on the physical installation or the physical look of the actual asset itself. There is lifecycle information put together for you. And we also review sections inside of all of those tabs there specific to your facility for security, manufacturing, power redundancy, layer 3 routers, asset management, access control, what training is in place, what your security looks like, what incident detection is already in place. This is reviewed based on your facility. And then we provide you information back based on those industry standards of policies and procedures that should be implemented, need to be updated, and we provide you with that remediation as well. So you get a full snapshot, physical, logical, virtual, and around the security for what your network is today, which provides the perfect foundation to help it move forward. Next slide, please. We also identify activity that could cause a risk to your industrial automation control system network communication. We identify vulnerabilities, open ports, ghost assets, unsecured protocols, put this together for you in an insight summary. And then if there is anything that is ranked as a critical or has a high CVS score, we provide you with those remediation links. So not only do we show you what the vulnerability is, we then give you the remediation to go ahead and schedule your downtime or during a scheduled downtime, remediate on your own. We can help you with that, but we identify the activity based on an invasive system. So Josh mentioned earlier Clarity. That is the software that is used here. It's CLAROTY. We actually collect data packets direct from your network up to 5 managed switches we can plug into, mirror those ports, and then analyze the data packets. Thousands of lines of data come back to you in a raw form and in a deliverable that is, very user friendly with multiple tabs and multiple remediation links inside of it. So we show you exactly where some of your risk is, and then help you move forward with a plan to start your remediation towards a more secure, more modern, more cost-effective industrial automation control system platform. Next slide, please. Just an example of what the traffic mapping would look like outside of that service, right? It obviously points to a couple things that Joshua was talking about a couple times in regards to segmentation and where some of those high traffic flows are and what should be broken off or put into another VLAN, and help understand what the traffic is doing so you can alleviate some of the stress and reduce any of that risk. Next slide, please. After we go through some assessments, we will start talking about documentation and designs. We do offer machine level network designs, which again, based on industry standards, based on your layouts and your floor plans, and help we put together documentation right on top of your one line or right on top of your plant floor drawings or process flow diagrams that will actually lay out what your network is, where it is connected. This one is showing endpoints, and the yellow circles are like zone enclosures. So that's where the layer 3 switches would be, going down via, in this case, it was copper to drops with some redundancy built in. So the design deliverables are very detailed and are meant to be to a point where you can take that to a certified installer with the hardware that's required from that design is provided in a BOM, and start deploying your network. Next slide, please. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Obviously, like we said earlier, this is a 5-part series. Part 3 will focus on intelligent devices. That's coming up in February. I have my information here, and we'll open it up to questions. If anybody has any, we'll go from there.
I checked the chat. There's nothing in the chat, Josh, but thanks, guys, for keeping these short. I know there was a lot of information there, Josh, and trying to keep it at a high level and not getting into the weeds pretty quickly is hard to do. But again, this was more of an overview and fundamentals of networking. And Mark, thanks for coming in and telling people about our services. But I have a question for Josh. Just really, Josh, if I know we go out a lot of times, we see the factory floor and there's a pseudo network. It's not, they've got machines that aren't connected, some aren't. When you're talking about OT network, I mean, how do we go about that one? What are we assessing if they're not even connected really, or they just have certain areas? How can you help me help that factory that is, really just islands of information?
So one of the neat things about that area is I can understand why a lot of people might be hesitant in a sense to upgrade this. Hey, it hasn't touched the internet. We've got nothing to worry about. But going on of what I said earlier with the car example, essentially, as this machine is moving along, doing what it has to do, you don't know when it's going to break. You're just waiting for it to break. So there's no preventative maintenance that could have been done to stop that downtime. With this, there's multiple different ways we can go about it and how a customer wants it. So going off of what we said earlier too, segmenting, we can keep it that, say hypothetically, you wanted it that, okay, this is part of its own OT network, its own plant network. It is not going to connect to the internet whatsoever, and there's going to be no way for stuff to get back to it. We can do that. But at the same time, too, now you can start gathering that treasure trove of data. You can start seeing, okay, I'm noticing this has been having an issue over the past few weeks. Say that there's a motor that you can go and look into alerts. You set it up that the motor slowed down a few times and you can see it in there. It's like, okay, maybe we should get on that sooner than later. Instead of waiting for it to break, now we see that information. So when there is downtime, we can start cranking on it and working on it instead of waiting for it during an actual work cycle to break down.
Okay, so it's really, you know, customization almost by each factory and what they're trying to accomplish and what their appetite for risk is. So again, I think we have the ability to do design, network design, and help customers should they want those services that are available. So
Every,
go ahead.
like going off of what I said earlier, every factory is built differently. And obviously, no one is going to be alike. Now, one of the keys to helping make these factories more modern and building them up or optimizing them is, what's the word I'm looking for here? A lot of uniformity within that factory. Now, it's still going to be a different network than, say, factory B or of another company or factory D, but at the end of the day, you're helping build upon that uniformity, you're helping build upon that information gathering, and doing a lot more to make sure that that factory, what works best for it, will continue to work best for it into the future.
Okay, this one's more from Mark. Mark, I know I come across it, you've come across it, and you know, especially since this is modernization, we've seen everything, right? So what if I'm not on Ethernet IP, I'm on data blue hose, right? The old data highway or data or device net or different types of technology. What do you do? A different networking.
Right, we would definitely want to review any standards or machine specifications that are in place within the facility to understand what the newer technology is. And if there's not, we would like to understand what the installed assets actually are, application review of what the machine is doing, how it's operating, how it's communicating, and through that application review, be able to provide some documentation on modernization planning, providing some options of devices that are able to be connected to a network, right? Be able to create that Ethernet network specific to the operations while understanding how operators, engineers are communicating, what data is looking to be pulled from historians or transaction managers or alarming systems, to be able to put a modernization path in place that could, you know, get to the end result, whether that end result is improved throughput, security, communication with an ERP is key. Information's coming from IT into the OT, and we need to make sure that that's secure. So starting with an understanding of the application, of the assets, really goes a long way to let the standards and documentation drive a modernization plan.
And I get, that's my point, is we find it's all over the map on with clients. Some of them do have well documented networks and architecture and typology, and others don't. So part of a service we can offer is help customers get that point, right? To your point, that not only what they have today is where they want to go. We can help them design the network for their future and try to minimize their risk with a lot of what they have today. And so,
yeah, the last two Western New York projects on the design side is a lot of future proofing. Only 3 or 4 of the work cells are actually going to go live into the new network, but the backbone has been put in place so that data highway, as those migrations in the other cells from data highway to Ethernet occur, they just can plug those right into the backbone that's already in place and start collecting information, bring those online, in a phased approach, because we all understand no company's just going to rip and replace all of their control systems at one time. It has to be planned. It has to be phased based on usage, needs, risk of the machine, risk of downtime. So putting that together at a foundational level is key.
Conrad has some question here. Is that some samples of our designs? I think we can. Some of it's proprietary, and we can't really probably show you specifics. But Mark, I think you do. I know in some of your correspondence, you do have some scenarios of different types of network designs, or
yeah, I've got a whole bunch. I mean, I've got a whole bunch of information we can further discuss. You know, we can set something up and share some information on what the design actually accomplishes and what the deliverables look like. So yeah, we could set that up.
I don't think we're not prepared to show that today. That I think maybe Conrad was looking for us to show some sample designs right now, but I think it might, Conrad, we'll talk to you offline if that's okay. Bob's mentioned that the CPWE, right, the standard that Cisco and Rockwell and Panduit came up with is the ideal, Bob. It's kind of what a documented network should have, but that's, I always live in the real world. And, to Mark's point, adopting that can be very expensive to that level, but, it's doing it over time.
The design guides from CPWE are definitely things that are followed in documentation, but there are over 800 pages in the last CPWE update. What we do for designs and documentation is specific to your facility. Mm-hmm. And then those design guides can be followed. Implementation is a second or third phase of an actual design, right? It has to be understood. There has to be a design created. Then it has to be purchased. Then it has to be deployed on a physical layer. And then it has to also be deployed logically, virtually, securely. So the information is all there. Everything's based on standards, but getting to that point is what we really help customers with.
Right. I'll ask only because I'll ask. Go ahead, Josh.
To go off what Mark said, one of the biggest things, and I can't help but stress this enough for any network, whether it be OT or IT, is update, patch, and document. And one of the things we've seen is some plants might do some of this, some plants might not do any of this, but it's a little bit of work that goes a far way in life. And obviously there is no such thing as a network too big or too messy that can't be documented. Don't ever feel too scared that something is maybe too complicated or out of your range. And that's where we can come in and help you. Say the network's been neglected for many of years and nobody's documented or built upon it. We can come in there, help you. We can go through all of it and give it to you in easily digestible bites of information that can help you go a much further way with your network. To give you a clue and going off to something earlier that Mark said with future proofing, I didn't want to go too much into depth into this because I feel like this might be a little bit more advanced for some people, but one of the things, and I'll try to keep it as simple as I can, one of the things that came when I was planning a network, people would ask, oh, hey, we want, this new office network, so on and so forth. We're going to have, I don't know, say 230 people, and we are continuously growing, so we plan on growing. So first thing to note is that number, 230 people. Now, obviously that's IT, translated to OT, say 230 machines. Going off of that, when you're starting to build upon that network, you realize a Class C address can only do 255. We're going to grow beyond that 230 in no time. So we're going to plan ahead with a Class B address, knowing where we can go in the future. There's going to be a lot more machines. There's going to be a lot more opening. So we're not blindsided 5 years down the road. Oh, we've ran out of available IP addresses. We need to redo the entire network from the ground up. We're trying to help build upon it and make it as simple and easy as it possibly can be for anyone.
Good points. I know we're living that real time, Josh. I mean, that's what you bring to the table, your IP background. And I know behind, a lot of times we work locally with the factories, but some of the companies we work with have national or international headquarters, and IT isn't always local. So we've had to work with IT at different levels. And, our partners, Rockwell has national, international coverage, as well as Cisco, another partner we started working with. And then, I think a lot of times people don't always think of us as an IT type solution, but Rexel can help work with your IT groups if it's resident there in your factory or your plant, or if it's at a national or international level. So I guess we can help you, and that's really what today's call was about, was any type of modernization projects or that you had going within your networking. Give us a call, Josh, myself, or Mark, or your account managers would love to have some talk, whether it be with you and your team on the controls OT side or with your IT folks. We welcome it. And, it's a new year, and I'm sure all of us are looking at what we can do and make investments. I know I'm talking about smart, but let's be smart about it. Let's, build it up front, and we welcome a dialogue. So reach out to us. I'm going to cut it off here. I appreciate everybody's time. Josh, great job. Mark, thanks for the help. Again, everybody, Happy New Year, and please think of Rexel when you need network help. Thank you.